It's not about how many words you write, but how good those words are. Oliver Marcus Malloy.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses. In case you couldn't tell, today's rule that we are talking about is about the word count for your book.
If you are planning to be traditionally published, or even if you're trying to just be within the marketable realm of self-publishing, word count is something the industry will drill into you. Certain genres, certain books, certain styles have word count ranges acceptable for what a novel is. Obviously, we're not talking about short stories or flash fiction or even novellas. We are going to be talking about the rule of full-length novels and what constitutes a novel in the traditional publishing world for various genres.
There is a very uninteresting and simple reason why these word count rules exist.
Hint, it has something to do with capitalism.
It is money. If your book is too short for the genre, readers will not feel like they're getting their money's worth. Hey, I paid $10 for this story and it's shorter than half of a Harry Potter book.
But if it's too long, if there are too many words, then it is more expensive to print and it's harder to sell a more expensive book from an unknown author.
Which is why Sanderson can get away with it.
Only after several New York Times bestselling books.
More importantly, for the main people that we're talking to in this podcast, word count is something great to be aware of about your genre because that's how the industry communicates about your book.
So when we talk about publishing, we talk about word count because it means something in the industry. Pages, though that means something to the readers, it has absolutely no meaning to people within the industry. Because your page count is completely dependent on your formatting, your font size, your spacing, your margins, your gutter. All of that goes into determining how long the book is going to be. However, what is consistent is word count.
I have a sample of one of my books that I am going to be submitting to a contest. They want the first 50 pages of the book. But they specified formatting so that it would be about the same word volume for all people. If I went with that formatting for my entire book, I would be changing the font size, the line spacing, and I would have about twice as many pages that I then have to pay to print off for my beta readers. If you are editing your book, the page numbers are going to be even stranger. So pages are more or less useless when you're talking about how long your book is. Because the same exact number of words will spread between 136 pages to about 300 pages.
Another reason why we use word count is because it's fairly easy to tell how experienced a writer is depending on how many hundreds of thousands of words they've written. If they've written 100,000 words, we know they've written the equivalent of about one long novel. If they've written 2 million words, we know that they're rather experienced and have a lot of words and writing already under their belt.
More importantly, staying within your lane as far as word count will help you meet audience expectations.
This is where the rule actually is important. Aside from industry standard, audiences have expectations about certain genres that they read, about how long books are going to be.
If you think of your favorite TV show, if it's the hour-long instead of the half-hour-long format, when you get about 3/4 of the way through it, you know this is the solution. They are approaching the solution so that the episode will be over and then I can go use the restroom. This is trained into you because of the duration of what you're experiencing. The same thing happens for readers. If I am used to reading thrillers, I'm going to want something a little shorter. If I'm used to reading fantasies, I'm going to want something a little longer in order to feel satisfied with the book, regardless of the quality of the text.
If you present a 150,000 word count book to a fantasy reader, they aren't going to have as many problems with it compared to presenting 150,000 words to a murder mystery reader. Those are vastly different word counts that they expect. And the murder mystery reader is going to really question why the book is so long.
Yeah, most murder mysteries are going to be about half that. There's also a rhythm to plot structure for people who have read a whole bunch of books, and those tend to be the people who are taking a chance on debut authors. That rhythm will directly correlate to word count. This is why when I am plotting a book, I put target word counts. I want to be at about 20,000 words when I hit this plot point. I once read a debut author who was selling their murder mystery novel, and the murder didn't happen until over halfway through the book. This is against the audience expectations for the story. I kept waiting for the story to get started. It was not healthy, and that could have been solved if they had understood word count in relation to plot structure.
The other reason why you need to pay attention to word count and staying within audience expectations is that important scenes have more words. This is a general rule because I've seen the opposite. But if you want readers to consider a scene to have importance, to have weight, use more words for that section where you're talking about the murder instead of using those words for the section where you are talking about how she got dressed in the morning.
The inverse is also true. If you only spend a paragraph and a half talking about when the character got kidnapped by pirates, and then the rest of the story moves on, this is not going to be seen as plot relevant, even if it's very relevant to the character.
This rule is one of those that can be broken and broken well if you know what you're doing when you're approaching the rule.
I see quite a few authors go, I just can't get my cosmic horror story shorter than 105,000 words. I've cleaned up all I can. I don't know how to make it within the 90,000 that publishers are asking me to have. There's a very easy solution to that, which is to self-publish.
Because with self-publishing, you are paying for the printing cost, you are fronting all of the investment, you're dealing with the price, you can make that decision. If you want to publish a book that is 500,000 words because you don't think it can get any shorter, you can absolutely do that. Obviously, you have to adjust the pricing based on the printing costs of that, but you also have to understand the potential consequences behind that. Now, in the world of ebooks, where distributing a book that is 500,000 words to somebody's e-reader is really easy, then it's not as much as a problem because you don't have to pay for those printing costs.
There is also a really easy, great, simple way to break this word count rule, and that is to be wildly popular already. If you are ultra famous, then you've earned the right to make a 120,000 word murder mystery.
Now, obviously, you're probably not there yet, but you can always dream. Maybe one day you'll get there. Or maybe you have written a story that the publishers, if you want to go traditional publishing, that they will look at and go, you know what, this very well could be worth the investment, even though it is longer. Let's try it. But I guarantee that depends on genre.
This is often how you see very famous authors that you really enjoy reading. This is how you see them break the rules. They've earned it because no matter how expensive it is to print Words of Radiance, it's gonna sell.
You also do need to double check your genre. Figure out which segment it falls under, especially if you're writing something that may blend across a couple of different genres. Perhaps the word count that you have fits better in one of those other genres. So if you're writing a romantasy story with a thriller edge to it, and it's only 75,000 words, perhaps the primary genre is thriller with a romantasy subplot.
I will say, depending on your style of writing, if you're a plotter or a pantser, break that rule most often in your first draft. One of your editing passes, especially one of your earlier editing passes, should be to rein that in, to bring it back into the scope that you expect the word count for that genre to be. But during that first draft, do whatever you want. Personally, I am a very heavy plotter, and I rely on word count to make sure the momentum in my story works, that things keep moving constantly, and that I'm hitting certain plot points certain amounts of the way through the story. So I will often, especially if I'm following a new kind of structure, I will say I want to hit this plot point at 50,000 words or whatever to make sure that I can tell the story at the pace that it's meant to be told.
For me, as a pantser, I do a lot of processing through putting the words on the page. So I just kind of word vomit until I figure out the character and the world and the plot and whatever. And a lot of that is going to get taken out. I don't pay attention at all to word count outside of possibly tracking it for writing sprints or whatever. But I will pay more attention to the rhythm of the story, to those word counts in the editing phase to make sure it is hitting those beats.
So we encourage you to, especially in that first draft, don't put too much stock in this rule. This rule is for marketing. This rule is for finding a traditional publisher. This rule is for keeping print costs within acceptable limits. This rule is not for telling that first story. So when you are writing that first draft,
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.